Hello everyone, Tactical Lich here. Patch 5.3 of Total War Warhammer 3 is introducing some exciting changes to the game, and my favorite one is definitely the buffs to the Skull Cannon. Now all three Khorne blood bikes, the Blood Throne of Blood Reaper, the Blood Shrine of Khorne, and also Skull Cannon, all of them got some weapon strength buff. Specifically for the Skull Cannon, 100 more AP weapon strength and a little bit more base weapon damage. So it can actually do some pretty good work in melee combat these days, as you need to throw it into melee combat to regenerate hit points and ammunition. It actually is quite handy, but the real game changer is actually the projectile. The Skull Cannon shots have been reworked to spawn a vortex damaging zone around where the projectile hits, and it can do some really good damage against both infantry and large entities, including cavalry and monstrous infantry. So let's just go into this battle between Khorne, played by yours truly, versus Tomb Kings, played by Jaema, who is also rolling with a newly buffed unit Cetra on his Chariot of the Gods. Let's see which army gets the stronger buffs here, giving them the upper hand they need to win the battle of buffs. In the front line, we have 4 Khorne Forsakens. These guys also have received some HP buffs in the new patch, getting 8 extra HP per model. Now that is up to 8,000 HP per unit, making them a bit more survivable in the front lines. On the flanks, there are some Marauders of Khorne with dual weapons, getting some extra anti-infantry damage against the skeletons, and then a bunch of Marauder horses with throwing axes to chip down the health of a bunch of Tomb King's constructs. They're accompanied by some Flesh Hounds of Khorne, which will be responsible for screening out enemies' light mobility. Behind them are some elite cavalry, the Skull Crushers of Khorne. Unfortunately, they did not receive any buffs in this patch, so they're still remaining at the same awkward spot on the meta as the previous patch. Leading the army, Valkia the Bloody here with Spear Slopnir and Demon Shield. On the other side of the battlefield, Jaema's Tomb King's army is lined up with a front line of Skeleton Warriors, second line of Nekara Warriors, and Kepler Guard, providing some solid anti-infantry power. On the flank, some Skeleton Spears to protect against enemy mobility. For the Missile Corps, the Tomb Kings are packing some serious firepower with multiple Constructs artillery. 2 units of Ushabtis with Great Bows, and 1 Sepulchral Stalkers. No regiment of renown, just the regular constructs here. For Tomb King's mobility on the flanks, Necra horses and the Skeleton Horsemen providing some mobility to intercept enemy cavalry, leading the army Cetra the Imperishable on a Chariot. Chariot these days are buffed now in this new patch, so expecting Cetra to do some really good work here. Anyways, that is it for the army builds. Now let's just get the battle started. Battle begins, and let's see where the first shot of the Skull Cannon lands. Going straight for the Skeleton Warriors. The impact damage isn't that great, but then the vortex damage from the projectile here, sucking in a bunch of Skeleton Warriors, knocking them over and burning through their HP, doing roughly 20% of the unit's HP as a damage. And then the second shot seems to go after the Sepulchral Stalkers, but not exactly the best shot there. Now the rest of the Khorne army is rushing forward, Forsaken moving up, but the third shot actually from the Skull Cannon largely missing. That's a problem of Skull Cannon. Unfortunately, the accuracy of the unit isn't that great, and if you're shooting it from afar, it's very likely to miss, just like this shot here. Missing the Skeleton Warriors, but at least the vortex spawned from the projectile is doing some more damage, burning through a little bit more Skeleton Warriors. Now Valkia has advanced ahead of her formation, trying to pressure those Ushabti with Great Bolts. Now a better hit from the Skull Cannon here. Pretty much a direct hit onto one of the Sepulchral Stalkers, knocking it down and doing some additional damage with the vortex. Now the rest of the Khorne infantry are in place to do a charge against the Skeleton Warriors. They have more HP now, so they'll be slightly more durable in melee combat. And now Valkia is dropping in that Spear Slopnir to reinforce the frontline fight, smashing those Skeleton Warriors apart, and the Forsaken can soon push on and move to the next ranks of the Skeleton army. Now on the far side, the Skeleton Horsemen and the Nekara Warrior Reserves needs to be moved up to intercept my infantry advance, as you can see here, Forsaken pushing up. And on the far flank, Flesh Hounds of Khorne are moving around the enemy flank, trying to get to the enemy backline there. Skull Cannon once again shooting, and this time doing some pretty good damage against the Ushabti with Great Bows. Once again, the impact damage of the shot itself isn't that amazing, but the vortex damage burning down multiple models of the Ushabti with Great Bows, doing some nice damage as well. Forsaken in the front line, smashing apart the skeleton warriors with no issue at all. The problem is whether they can deal with the Kepler Guard. Now, the Kepler Guard has anti-infantry bonus and pretty solid melee stats, and also their regeneration can help them hold in melee fights. However, the Forsaken does have their heavy armor to mitigate some of that infantry damage, so they will hold on for a bit, and trading against the Kepler Guard can't bring them down, but at least keep them occupied for now. Sepulchral Stalkers unleashing some shots onto the Skull Cannon, doing some pretty nice damage, but at least the Skull Cannon can heal itself using the Gore Feast ability. Skull Cannon needs to be in melee to regenerate ammo anyway, so throwing it into melee is definitely a good choice. Now, the Skull Cannon is starting to shoot at the Sepulchral Stalker, doing some nice damage with the Vortex burning through multiple unit models of these Tomb King's constructs. Another hit onto the Sepulchral Stalkers, the Vortex continues to do damage. The Vortex seems to cover 3 models of the Sepulchral Stalkers and did 300 damage to the unit. Another shot comes in, but this time it suffers from the accuracy issues, missing the Sepulchral Stalkers entirely, wasting a shot. On the far side there, I really haven't paid much attention to the Skull Crusher and the Flesh Hound, so they managed to dispatch some skeleton cavalry, but that's about it. Here comes the Sword of Khorne right on top of the Kepler Guard, nuking half their HP away, and that clears out a lot of infantry on the ground here. Even one of the Nekar warriors got hit by the tier 3 Khorne ability, while the Marauder Horsemen with throwing axes are just circling around the enemy formations, trying to chip away the HP of enemy constructs. Another spear slop near, thinning out some skeleton spear support here, just trying to eliminate my opponent's infantry so that I have a little bit better time isolating those constructs and finishing them off. Forsaken here pressuring the Ushabti, keeping them occupied in melee and preventing them from shooting. While at the back there, the Skull Cannon has ran out of ammo, so it has charged into melee combat, dealing damage to the Ushabti with great balls here. Skull Crushers trying to go after the Sepulchral Stalkers. Perhaps a charge from the rear and their anti-large armor piercing would do great against the Tomb King's constructs. My throwing axes are a bit all over the place. One of the Murder Horses will be pushed off by the pursuing Nakara Horsemen, which is still relatively healthy. Flesh Hounds are occupying those Ushabti with great balls here. Now, Kepler Guard and etc. are combining their might to screen off the Skull Crushers, and the Skull Crushers being debuffed by the blinded effect from the Blessed Blade of Petra will be forced back here. Do not want to really deal with etc. right now. On the far side there, throwing axes continues to chip away the health of enemy constructs. Another shot from the Skull Cannon missing, but if it actually lands, it definitely can do some good work. Flesh Hounds lunge towards those missile constructs, once again keeping those Sepulchral Stalkers occupied. Another shot from the Skull Cannon, this time getting some really nice contact. And one of the Sepulchral Stalkers, because of the burning vortex and some throwing axes, was knocked out of commission. With the Stalkers so weak right now, the throwing axes are safe to sit back and just finish off the rest of their HP with the AP fire. Now, Skeleton Warriors are coming in to screen off those Flesh Hounds. Cetra is also reinforcing, but here comes the Skull Cannon going into melee. It has ran out of ammo once again and needs to go into melee to charge up. The weapon strength buff in the recent patch comes in really handy, hacking away Cetra's HP on his Chariot of the Gods. Now, Cetra is knees deep in combat, and it is the perfect opportunity for me to pin him down. Skull Crushers, Flesh Hounds all piling onto the King of Nekara. Even activating the Horn of Khorne to juice up my unit's melee attack, just trying to secure that kill. Cetra taking so much damage means the curse has been activated, draining away the HP of my units. Cetra might be called imperishable, but seems like reality is the exact opposite. All the Khorne units getting that 24 attack, especially the Skull Cannon here, seems to be crushing him pretty hard, and Cetra has no choice but to flee combat. Kepler Guard is trying to follow their Leash Lord, and Neru's incantation is a desperate attempt at Hail Mary to try to stay alive, but unfortunately he was crumbling pretty fast at that point, and that little bit of HP he has is not gonna be enough to keep him alive. Now, Skull Cannon will be free to go after other targets, now jumping into combat against the Nekar Horsemen there, feasting on their enemy's blood to regenerate health and collecting their skulls for ammo. On the far side, Kepler Guard duking out against the Marauders of Khorne. They will win against the Marauders, but I am now free to just cycle charge around with my mobility. On the far side, the Ushabti Great Bulls have been occupied by the Flesh Hounds of Khorne there, and the throwing axes are coming back in here, being charged by the Nekara Horsemen, but the Skull Cannon will jump in for a rear charge and finish off those Skeleton Cavalry. Army losses is hit, and the Kepler Guard shall return to dust as well. Now let's wrap up in the post-battle screen. Valkyr the Bloody did pretty well going after those constructs, and Cestra's Chariot generate quite a bit of value with her anti-large AP and fire damage. The infantry did okay, mostly just clearing out enemy skeletons and pressuring the enemy constructs, keeping them from firing. Skull Crushers didn't receive any buffs in this patch, so they're still in the same awkward spot and was having some disappointing performance. As for the throwing axes, I mismicroed them pretty badly, but that's fine, because the Flash Hounds and the Skull Cannon made up for their losses, as the Skull Cannon did really well, shooting down enemy constructs and also going into melee, and in the end, hunting down Cetra the Imperishable with the help of friendly Skull Crushers, Flash Hounds, and Valkyr herself, picking off this crucial Lord of the Tomb Kings, and definitely earning back its own worth and 2 chevrons as well, still having quite a bit of HP left to grind through enemy skeletons. For the Tomb King's army, Cetra, after the touch-up on his Chariot of the Gods, he is definitely a menace, Tokyo drifting on his divine ride. The problem is that the rest of the Tomb King's army didn't quite do their job here. The skeletons got punched pretty badly by the Forsaken, especially the Forsaken having more HP these days, and Capra Guard tried their best to trade, just not quite enough to cut through all those Khorne infantry, while the mobility here out-traded by Flash Hounds and Skull Crushers, while the constructs were constantly harassed by the Skull Cannon, the Flash Hounds, and Valkyr herself, so not exactly the most damage from these Tomb King's firepower as well. Anyways, that is it for today's battle. I hope you all enjoy this little bit of showcase of the reworked Skull Cannon. Definitely seems to be a much more powerful missile tool these days, especially the Vortex effect, making it more lethal against bunched up enemy units, particularly infantry and perhaps cavalry as well. Anyways, that's all for today's video. If you want to see more Total Warhammer multiplayer content, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Itch, signing out.